Welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, and this is post-conference. We're filming this, you're seeing this post-conference, we're filming this pre-conference because conference starts tonight. And so, since I have all these fabulous experts who are good friends of mine, that's why we're doing these interviews. On Tuesday, you got to hear Dr. Bregan talk about school shootings, and a topic I've wanted to talk to him about for a long time. And today, I get to interview my good friend and colleague, Dr. Janice Stanger, about a topic I think that's going to interest you quite a bit. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Stanger. We met at a meeting for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, so I knew she was good people, or she wouldn't have been at this meeting, but I really didn't know how good a people she was until I got to read her book. She's a consummate researcher. Everything she says you can take to the bank, and I have to say publicly and in front of everybody, you have made me so much better in practice. I think every single day that I come into this office and I talk to people, I probably quote you every day at least one time. Wow. And one of the reasons I say this is that one of Dr. Stanger's strengths, I'm going to call you Janice from now on because we're friends, but yeah. One of Janice's strengths is that she has a great understanding of the science, and then she can take a really complicated topic and boil it down so that everyday people understand it. So she's been speaking at our conferences. Well, we invited her the first time, and then she's been coming every year ever since, and she'll be back next year and the year after and forever because she's always got interesting things to say. So with that, you are delivering 2 talks on this topic, dangerous misunderstandings about your body.
Right.
And so that's an interesting topic. Why did you pick that?
Well, as you know, for many years I've mostly done an approach that was dangerous nutrition myths in one form or another. And there's any number of those, and I talk about them all the time, and you do, and we both write about them. But what I found is sometimes I was just reassuring people without them really understanding the basic science or why I was reassuring them. And not only that, I began to feel that if people really understood how their bodies work, they'd be much more self-sufficient. And if they totally understood how their bodies work, you and I would be out of a job because they could just figure out everything themselves. So it's kind of like a car. If you have a car and you don't know how it works, you know nothing about this car, you're going to have mechanics putting things over on you all the time, right? And you might do really stupid things like, you know, you go to check the oil, but you don't realize that the amount is supposed to be between the min line and the max line. You have no idea because you don't understand your car. So you just start pouring oil into the engine until it overflows, and you think you've done a good job. Well, we know people do that nutritionally all the time. They don't stay between min and max. They just eat the supplements by the handful or whatever, and they overload themselves, and then, you know, it's just like putting too much oil in your car. So I thought, if I can work on an approach of getting people to understand their own body, I think that's the most important thing I can do. And it's not like we're starting with a blank slate. If we were starting from a blank slate, it would be a lot easier. You know, people knew nothing about it. But in fact, people know something about it, which is good, but they also have a lot of misunderstandings. So before you can really give people the complete picture of how their bodies work, you have to kind of demystify all these misunderstandings that are kind of standing in their way of understanding that. So I thought this approach will probably be more basic science, and I can walk people through what they really need to understand to really start making really good decisions about their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said, it would be great if people knew nothing. But if you're starting from the assumption, for example, that if a little bit of a nutrient's a good idea, and gargantuan amounts has to be better,
right.
We have to get rid of that being a good idea before we can get back to what really is a good idea. We have to debunk that and then come back and say, okay, now well, how is this really supposed to work?
Right. So I'm very much in a debunking mode now. And what I found out, one thing I found out just preparing for this conference, because I've been thinking about this a while, but I haven't put anything formal together, was it's a lot of fun. Because when you're debunking something that's really stupid, it's fun. You know, you can just poke fun at it. It's almost like a comedy. So I've just had a good time with it. I add a little levity to it.
to a very deep topic that sometimes is all doom and gloom. So it's sometimes a little bit of levity is good.
Right.
Well, I was looking through your slides, and I can't wait till tomorrow to hear your presentation. I get to hear the first one. The second one I have to watch on the video. And by the way, if you're not going to be here with us or haven't been here with us, you can see this all on videotape. Just by emailing me at pampopper@msn.com. But I saw that you were going to tackle this topic of bone broth, which I must get an email every day, somebody saying, what's up with bone broth, and should I, whatever their problem is. I have an autoimmune disease, I have joint pain, I have migraines, I have irregular menstrual periods, whatever is wrong with you, bone broth is supposed to cure.
And it's so popular now. The other day I was in the pet store buying some cat food for my cat. And they had all these brands, they had like 2 or 3 different brands up in the counter at the pet store.
For
bone broth for dogs. And not only was that like bone broth for dogs, but it was like it had stuff in it like turmeric and pumpkin and all this kind of stuff, and it was for dogs. And I thought, really? Who's going to think that this is curative for the dog? But it was pretty pricey. All the stuff was very pricey, so you can see why it has a good market.
Right. So what's up with the bone broth? I mean, it's not a good idea. First of all, because it's everything the opposite of what you would do to actually solve any of those problems that I just mentioned. But what is the problem with bone broth?
Well, there's a lot of problems, and my tactic on this, Pam, is going to be to start with the most basic science. So one thing you're told in bone broth is good, because there's so many claims made for it, is, the collagen in bone broth is going to help rebuild your cartilage, right? So it doesn't make sense, because what I do then is I say, okay, the collagen's a protein. So I talk about what is a protein, it's a linked chain of amino acids and all the different functions in the body and all that kind of thing. And then what happens when protein is digested? Well, the thing about these protein fibers, and they have to be folded very, very precisely to do their job, the first thing that happens when it hits your stomach is it becomes totally unfolded, because the acid in your stomach denatures it. Denature just means unfolded, because, scientists like to use fancy words.
Right.
So instead of saying it unfolds, they say it denatures. Okay, so, just let us use big words.
Or broken down. That's a simple term. It gets broken down.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens after. First it gets unfolded, and then they start breaking it down, basically chopping it to smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. But most of that actually happens when it hits your intestines. So in the stomach, it gets unfolded. They'll start to break it down. It hits your intestines. That's when you break down the protein into all these little individual amino acid links. And it can be thousands of little links. So once you do this, it's like a big pile of recycled bricks. Like if you had an old house and you didn't want some just come in and bulldoze it, but you wanted to be able to reuse the bricks because they were very beautiful. You could take it apart brick by brick, and then you could build whatever you want from the bricks, right? You could build anything that could be made from bricks. Well, it's the same thing when you take this collagen and you break it down into its amino acids. There's only 20 amino acids. All the essential amino acids are only made by plants and bacteria. Animals can't make them. So you've got all these amino acids, probably a lot more than you're ever going to need in your, entire rest of your life when you're eating all this stuff. And then your body's not going to rebuild it into collagen. It's going to rebuild it into whatever it needs. Mm-hmm. And in fact, since you probably have way too many amino acids, what it's going to do with most of them is either turn them into glucose if you need glucose. If you don't need glucose, it's going to turn it into fat, right? And the nitrogen part of the protein, which is the part that's not in the carbohydrates or the fat that your body's going to build, it has to get rid of, right? Your body has to get rid of. And that's very hard on the liver and kidneys. So basically you're damaging your body in all this. And then the half-life, the turnover of collagen in your body, or rather cartilage, because cartilage isn't just collagen. Cartilage is basically a lot of different things, like proteins linked to sugars and things like that, are called proteoglycans, is that it takes like 400 years to turn over. Scientists go and they measure these things. So the turnover time for cartilage is like 400 years. So even if your body did, by some incredible chance, want to use it to turn over, your cartilage, it's going to take like 400 years. So probably most of us are going to be around at that point.
Darn
I
it.
don't know, yeah, which I was. So there's just so many myths in there. Now you might be wondering, oh, okay, so it's a silly myth, and it's dangerous to your pocketbook because this stuff is very expensive. But why is it otherwise dangerous? Well, there's two reasons it's dangerous, and pretty much every single dangerous misunderstanding I've worked on so far has the same twin dangers, and they're kind of like the front and back side of a coin. So one danger is the thing that you're consuming is actually dangerous. So we know that bone broth is dangerous because it has lead in it, it has other contaminants in it, it's way too high in protein, it can cause allergic reactions, it's very concentrated animal protein, which makes your body make more IGF-1, which is a cancer promoter. So there's a lot of reasons why it's actually dangerous to eat. So anybody can see that, right? The other danger is a little more insidious because people don't necessarily think of it right away, but I think it's that it makes people complacent, okay? So let's say you're taking this bone broth to alleviate your arthritis, and that's why a lot of people use it. There's this myth that it will rebuild the collagen in your joints or the cartilage in your joints, and that'll alleviate your arthritis. And we just saw that's totally untrue and physically completely impossible. But you're going, okay, what else could I be doing to alleviate my arthritis? So here I am taking all this bone broth and basically poisoning myself with it while I'm alleviating my arthritis, supposedly. But I'm not doing other things I could be doing. So what are the things that have been scientifically proven to alleviate arthritis? Well, nobody watching this is going to be surprised. Diet, exercise, losing weight. Those alleviate arthritis. But, who wants to do all that work? Who wants to start eating differently and having to actually, exercise and get physical activity and lose weight if they need to lose weight? Isn't it so much easier to drink a few cups of bone broth?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so it just distracts people and it makes them complacent. And, I hate to blame the people who are making this for everything, because it could be even without the bone broth, people wouldn't go out and take those measures. But to the extent that they're feeling very self-satisfied because they're drinking bone broth, they're certainly not going to go, okay, well, I guess I better start walking an hour a day.
Right.
So, and that's true for almost every dangerous misunderstanding, is it has those twin aspects of, well, number one, what you're doing is dangerous, and number two, you're not doing something you could be doing that would actually help you. Mm-hmm. And very often that's something, of course, is diet, physical activity, and it could be other things like stress relief. It could be, losing weight. It could be getting more sleep. There's a lot of things it could be doing, but you're not doing them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, a couple of things. I guess, when we talk about other things like financial things, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, right? Yeah. And the little voice in the back of your head saying, this sounds like it would be a magical solution to my problems, but there generally aren't magical solutions to my problems, so I probably should be looking elsewhere. So, all right, well, I talk about bone broth every week because somebody asks about it.
Oh, yeah.
I've said tongue-in-cheek a couple of times, with all the claims that are made, pretty soon it will be that if your sixth grade son is having trouble in math, give him some bone broth, and it's bound to fix that too, because it fixes everything.
Oh, absolutely. People are always looking for a gimmick, and whenever you see a gimmick, I immediately go, okay, that's not credible.
That cannot be right.
There's just so many gimmicks around these days.
Exactly.
There's just no end of them, and as soon as one kind of loses popularity because people figure out this really isn't working, or they get bored with it or something like that, then another gimmick springs up.
Sort of like diets. There's always a new diet plan, and then when that one cycles through, then there's another one and another one. And then about 20 years later, this thing that was fashionable comes back again. You can recirculate it because everybody forgot.
Right, exactly. And now you have a whole new generation of victims.
Yeah.
So, it does keep recycling.
Well, thank you. That's excellent. And so you're going to do Dangerous Misunderstandings 1 and 2, two lectures, and I've got to do a breakout session, so I won't be able to see the breakout session that you're doing, so I'll get to watch you on videotape also.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm
So,
glad that you're taping it. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and clarifying this issue for people. Perfect Formula Diet is the name of Dr. Stanger's book, and your website is?
perfectformuladiet.com. I am going to have a new website probably early to mid next year, and I'm sure that Pam will announce it when it's up. But that one will be a totally different format from my current website. It will have more of a dangerous misunderstanding kind of way of doing business when you think of it, but the central focus will be on aging and slowing aging.
And you have a PhD in aging, human aging.
I finally decided I should focus on when I have a PhD, and it took me a few years to figure that out, but now I have it. I'm going to make that happen.
But there's still great information at Perfect Formula Diet. Read the book. I read it. I got a lot out of it. I use concepts that you talk about every day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a good friend and for standing up for the truth about everything.
I love doing it.
All right, as usual, pass this on to anybody else who you think would enjoy watching it. Hit that subscribe button so you can get these videos every week. And I'll be back to you on Tuesday with more news.